Hello, this is Dan Pro. Welcome to part 4 of my facial rig tutorial series. In part 3 we set up our basic deformation bones for our eyelids and also the upper part of the cheek. And now we can get back to something a little bit more interesting and fun and start adding the controls for our eyelids and the cheekbone. And we can update our look at target a little bit after we do that. Get some fleshy movement on our eyelids. So first off, I want to select the eyelid bones. I'm going to go to side view and make sure that I'm in edit mode. I'm going to select the tail ends only. And then I can do E to extrude, GY, drag out two new bones. I'm going to rename the top one to eyelid.u for upper. Control C to copy that name and then paste it on the bottom one. And I can just switch U to B for bottom. I'm going to parent both of these to the head bone, Control P, keep offset. Now in pose mode, I'm going to put both of those bones in my control bone list, assign them, and now we can set up some transform locks on both of them. Because this bone only needs to go up and down on its Z axis. We can lock X and Y and all of the rotation and scale values. Do that for both. Now we're set up. What I want to do here is have the deformation bone for the eyelid use a damp track constraint to follow this up and down. So we will select the upper eyelid, Control Shift select the upper deformation bone, Shift Control C, add constraints with targets, damp track, and now we should be able to manipulate the eyelid with just the location of our new eyelid control. We'll repeat that on the bottom one. Shift Control C, damp track, and there we go. So very easy. It's always important to set up controls for every part, and you don't want to ever directly control your deformation bones. So we can actually lock everything there. We don't need to touch them any longer. We can use our control bones to manipulate them. Now, something that would be nice to do is when the eyes go up or down, is to have our eyelids go up and down just a little bit to add some fleshiness there. So let me turn on our mechanism bone layer, make sure everything's cleared out, and I think if we track the X rotation of our MCH eye bone, that is the one that's actually rotating to make the eye go up and down, we can add a transformation constraint to drive this just up and down a little bit here. So I'm going to select MCH I.L, shift select the upper eyelid bone, shift control C. We'll add a transformation constraint. We'll go to the constraints panel, and there it is. We just need to configure it. So in this case, we're going changing the rotation to a location. I'm going to click on extrapolate here, and we need local space to local space. So we're going X rotation to Z location. So we're using the X rotation of the eye to drive the Z location of our bone here. So let's set up our basic ratio. I think from 0 to maybe 10 degrees. We want to lift this from 0 to 0.002. I think this will work. Let's check it out. When we move our eye control, as that bone rotates up, it's just going to lift that eyelid just a little bit. So I like that. Seems like it's working decent. I'm just going to copy that constraint to this lower one here. So I'll select the lower one first, shift select the top one, and with the copy attributes add-on, which comes standard in Blender, if you have that enabled in user preferences, you can do Control C, and then you can copy selected constraints, click transformation, and now both lids should move properly, go up and down as we move our eye control. So we get some pretty free animation here. So we don't want the eyelids to do a lot of movement, but a little bit is going to give us some free animation. Now for the cheek, well, actually, before we get to the cheek, something else that would be nice for our eye control is if we scaled it, since we're not using that scale values right now. If we scaled it, it would be nice to cross our eyes. So if we rotate these, now I still have this set as quaternion. Actually, we don't need that, so let's change this to XYZ Euler. And there's no reason to twist our eyes along the y-axis. We can just lock that. We'll do this for both. XYZ Euler, lock our y. There will be much easier to animate, and we don't really need to ever get anywhere close to 90 degrees, so we never have to worry about gimbal lock with these. Alright, so as I was mentioning, it would be nice to use the transformation constraint to use the x-axis scaling on our eye control to have our eyes cross. So if we go in, that will be on z negative. Let's add that transformation constraint. So eye target will be the target bone for the constraint. Shift control or shift click on the eye, shift control C, transformation, find it there, and now we just configure it, and we are doing the scale value to a rotation value, local space to local space. And if I remember correctly, we're doing X scale to Z rotation. So the X scale here, 1 is unscaled, and if we scale it down to 0.5, we want to drive, let's just quick extrapolate here quick, make sure we don't forget that. We'll drive this from 0 to, let's try 45. If we scale it down now it's actually going out, so let's just switch this from 45 to negative 45. There we go. Ooh, negative 45, not 445. There we go. A little bit more involved. Alright, there we go. And then we can have a remote control way to cross our eyes. So if we ever need to get up close and look at the end of our nose, we can cross our eyes just by scaling our look at target. Now we can get into the cheek. Now the cheek is actually kind of a weird problem here, because when I was testing this, I found that by rotating it and changing the location and even the scale, I found it to be very useful. So, but having to do that, change its location, rotation, and scale to get a decent cheek puff is actually kind of problematic. I'd rather use one control and one transform on that control. But I don't want to lose the ability to do this. So I'm going to actually split this control up into two parts. One is going to be a tweak control, where I'm just going to basically have all of the ability to change the location, rotation, or scale values any way I want. And the other one is just going to be an easy to use control like the eyelid control, just up and down on one axis. And then we'll use an action constraint to get the cheek puff that we need. So if that doesn't make sense, hopefully it will once we add these bones here. Go to side view, go into edit mode, and I think I'll just take the deformation bone here. I'm going to scale it down a little bit, and then shift D, scale up a new one, and this will be our cheek tweak. And all we need to do in this case is have our cheek, our deformation bone, follow the transforms, copy all the transforms of it. So we'll add a copy transforms from our cheek tweak to the deformation cheek. Shift Control C, copy transforms, and that's just a combination copy location, rotation, and scale. So wherever we move that, it's going to allow us to do whatever we want. So pretty simple. Next, we're going to set up our simple main controller here. So I'm going to take cheek tweak, shift D, and GY. I'm going to drag it out in front here because it doesn't need to have the same starting position as our other bone needed to have. I'm going to rename this to just cheek. We'll tab into pose mode here, set up our transform locks. Only needs to travel up and down, no rotation or scale. Just go up and down, and let's set up a limit to that, so maybe 0.3. So let's add a constraint, limit location, and we will do the limit the local space location from 0 to a maximum of 0.03. Now we have our control set up, so it's got a positive locking in between those values. Now let's set up the action constraint. Before I do the action constraint, I would like to make sure that I have my right side bones set up here. So I want to make sure that I have properly named everything for left and right. So let's select the bones that haven't been renamed. These are all the new bones in the rig. Go to edit mode, armature, and auto name left or right to append.l to them. We just switch through. I'm going to cycle through these and make sure that everything was properly named correctly. Anything that I might have changed. Alright, now I'm ready to symmetrize this. Now this might be a little bit scary here, but what I'm going to do is take everything on the right side and do X and delete them. Next I'm going to go back to select the left side and back to armature, symmetrize, and there we go. We should be set. Now I do need to reparent the right eye back to the right eye bone. Control P, bone. Make sure that that is happening. And rotate that. Alright. That's working. Let's check our control here. Now I need to flip the transformation control because both of these eyes are going in. I need this one to cross in the other direction. So I'm going to select it and switch this from -45 to 45. Now I should be able to cross and uncross my eyes. Let's see if just double check our lid control. That is working. Our eyes the lids are going up and down correctly. And of course our cheek tweak is working properly. Now we can add our action constraint to our cheek tweak bones. So to do that, I'm going to go to my action editor, and that's just a sub-editor of the dope sheet. So if we switch to dope sheet, then action editor, we'll be able to add an action, new. Let's change the name of this action to AC for action constraint underscore rig. I want to select both the cheek tweak bones and insert location, rotation, and scale keyframes on frame 1. I'm going to go to frame 11, and then I'm just going to take this left side one here to start with and just pose it so I get a nice cheek puff position here. So that looks relatively decent to me. A nice raising of that cheek and puffing out. So I'll select it and copy it to the other side. Make sure that they are both selected. Insert location and rotation and scale keyframes. I want to make sure that all of the keys on this action are set to linear. So by typing T, I set them to linear. And now I can disconnect the action. Now before you ever disconnect actions, we have the F button here. That is a fake user button. If you don't have a user for certain types of data in Blender, it will flush it when you save and reopen it. So I call this the F-bomb button. If you don't click it, you'll probably start swearing quite often. So make sure you give it a fake user before you click off on it, since it's that type of data that will get flushed up without a user. And now let's set up our action constraint. So our cheekbone is going to drive our action constraint on the cheek tweak. Shift Control C. Let's add an action constraint. We want to use the Z location of our cheekbone, a local space of it, to drive the AC rig action. The action range is what we set there, and the start frame is 1 and the end frame will be 11, and then just going to line up with the starting value of 0, and we had a max value on the z-axis of 0.03, and by moving this now we should be able to drive that action. So pretty cool. That is a nice way where we can get a more complex action than just a single transform, mapping a single transformer like we can do with transformation constraint. So action constraints are actually one of my very favorites. Now we'll probably use this control most often, 90% of the time, but if we ever want to try to push this rig to new heights or whatever, we can always use our cheek tweak control. Let's make sure that our other side is working properly. Nope, we need to parent or copy our action constraint over there. So we'll select the right side, shift select the left side, and with the copy attributes add-on, Control C, copy selected constraints, action, OK. And now this one just needs to be reconfigured. Instead of using the left cheekbone, we obviously want to use the right. Now there we go. We have our cheek puff control. So there are a few simple things we can do to add some extra controls. We get some extra animation for free by adding the transformation controls on our eyelids, which makes our eye target look a lot nicer. And by splitting up a easy to use control with a control that we can do multiple things with, we can kind of get the best of both worlds. So I hope these tips and techniques will help you with your rigs. If you liked the contents of this tutorial, please like and subscribe. Until next time, good luck.